Here's something that might surprise you. The moment you announce your goals and dreams to others, you unknowingly activate a powerful force that can completely sabotage your success. Think about it. Has this ever happened to you? You get excited about a new project, a business idea, or a personal goal, and you can't wait to share it with friends, family, or colleagues. But instead of the support you expected, you're met with skepticism, doubt, or even well-meaning warnings about why it won't work. Suddenly, that burning conviction you felt begins to flicker. Their uncertainty becomes your hesitation. Their fear infects your faith. This isn't coincidence. This is a fundamental principle that the most successful people throughout history have understood and protected fiercely. Prosperity, true prosperity, is born in silence. It thrives in the quiet spaces of your mind, far away from the noise and opinions of others. When you speak too soon about what you're building, you're not just sharing information, you're actually draining the creative energy needed to bring that vision into reality. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth and opportunity while others struggle endlessly despite working just as hard? What if I told you that the difference has nothing to do with talent, connections, or even luck, but rather with something most people completely overlook: silence? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where, in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you approach your goals and aspirations. There exists a sacred space, a mental state that most people never learn to access consciously. It's that twilight zone between sleep and full awareness, where your conscious mind begins to relax its grip and your subconscious becomes incredibly receptive. In this quiet state, something remarkable happens. New ideas, suggestions, and beliefs can bypass all your usual mental resistance and plant themselves directly into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. And here's where it gets truly powerful. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue, doesn't debate, doesn't question. It simply accepts and executes. Whatever you plant there with emotion and repetition must eventually express itself in your outer world. This is why the wealthy seem to operate by different rules. They've learned to work in silence, to build in the invisible realm first, and to let their results speak louder than their words ever could. But most people do the exact opposite. They scatter their creative power through constant talking, explaining, and seeking validation from those who haven't achieved what they're trying to create. They announce their intentions to the world before the foundation is even laid, and then wonder why their dreams never materialize. The question isn't whether this principle works. It does, with mathematical precision. The question is, are you willing to embrace the discipline of silence long enough to see it work in your life? Because what happens next? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a critical distinction that most people miss entirely, and understanding this difference could be the turning point in your entire journey toward prosperity. When we talk about harnessing the power of your mind, many people immediately think of positive thinking. They imagine repeating cheerful affirmations in the mirror or plastering sticky notes with uplifting quotes around their house. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with optimism, what we're discussing here is something far more precise, far more powerful. This is mental engineering. Mental engineering isn't about hoping for the best or trying to convince yourself that everything is wonderful when your current reality suggests otherwise. It's about deliberately restructuring the very architecture of your thoughts, especially during those critical hours when your body rests and your conscious mind steps aside. Think of it this way. Positive thinking is like putting a fresh coat of paint on a crumbling building, while mental engineering is rebuilding the foundation itself. One is cosmetic, the other is structural. One makes you feel better temporarily, the other transforms the actual blueprint of your existence. If this resonated with you, if something shifted inside as you listened, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more we're going to explore together. principles of prosperity, consciousness, manifestation, and the hidden laws that govern success. Each video is designed to give you practical wisdom you can apply immediately, not just theory, but actual tools for transformation. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes of your consciousness. Every single night, as you drift into sleep, your mind doesn't simply shut down and wait for morning. It enters a profoundly creative state where it processes, organizes, and most importantly, it begins to align your thoughts with specific frequencies. These aren't mystical vibrations or New Age concepts. This is how natural law operates. Your dominant thoughts, the ones you've impressed upon your mind with emotion and repetition, start broadcasting like a radio signal. And just like a radio signal attracts specific stations, your mental frequency attracts matching opportunities, ideas, and circumstances. The hidden truth that separates those who succeed from those who perpetually struggle is this. Your subconscious mind is the bridge between your limited, finite intelligence and something infinitely greater. It's the same creative force that sparked the breakthroughs of history's greatest minds. Every revolutionary invention, every fortune built from nothing, every seemingly miraculous transformation began in this invisible workshop. Edison didn't stumble upon the light bulb through random chance. Ford didn't accidentally create an automotive empire. Carnegie didn't luck into his steel empire. They each understood, whether consciously or intuitively, that prosperity cannot be chased like a rabbit running through the woods. It must be attracted through precisely aligned thoughts and commanded through unwavering, disciplined focus. This is where most people derail their own success. They approach wealth and opportunity with a hunter's mentality. Aggressive, desperate, scattered. They chase one idea, then abandon it for another when results don't appear immediately. They force, they strain, they exhaust themselves in frantic activity. But the universe doesn't respond to force. It responds to alignment. It responds to clarity. It responds to the quiet, steady conviction of a mind that knows what it wants and holds that vision without wavering. Your subconscious doesn't understand words the way your conscious mind does. It responds to feelings, to images, to the emotional intensity behind your thoughts. This is why simply saying affirmations while your mind contradicts them with doubt achieves nothing. The subconscious recognizes the conflict and remains paralyzed. But when you impress an idea upon it with genuine emotion, with vivid, mental imagery, with absolute certainty repeated consistently, especially in those moments before sleep when the gateway is wide open, transformation becomes inevitable. The impact of understanding this principle cannot be overstated. You're not manipulating reality or bending some cosmic spoon. You're working with the same laws that govern everything in nature. A seed doesn't argue about whether it can become a tree. It simply follows its internal blueprint, and given the right conditions, transformation occurs naturally. Your mind operates by the same principle. Give it the right blueprint, the right conditions, the right consistency, and the external world must eventually mirror what's been constructed internally. Now here's what makes this even more fascinating. Most people live their entire lives completely unaware that they've been programming their subconscious all along, just in the wrong direction. Every worry repeated becomes instruction. Every fear dwelled upon becomes a command. Every doubt entertained strengthens the pattern. They've been using this incredible power against themselves, and then they wonder why life feels like an uphill battle. But the moment you recognize this, everything shifts. You realize that the same mechanism that's been creating limitation can be redirected to create abundance. The same mental patterns that attracted struggle can be rewired to attract opportunity. This isn't about working harder. It's about thinking differently, with precision and intention. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to reprogram my mind," because what comes next is where we move from understanding these principles to actually applying them in a way that produces measurable results in your daily life. Let me share something that might challenge everything you've been taught about achieving success. There's a moment each day that holds more creative power than all your waking hours combined, and most people completely waste it. I'm talking about those final minutes before you surrender to sleep. This isn't poetic exaggeration. This is the precise moment when your mind is most receptive to permanent transformation. But here's the critical part that determines whether you wake up moving toward prosperity or deeper into struggle: what you carry into that sacred space. Your mind has a fundamental limitation that most people never recognize. It cannot, under any circumstance, hold fear and faith at the same time. These two forces are like water and oil. They simply cannot coexist in the same mental space. Every night before sleep, you face a choice, whether you realize it or not. You're either releasing your day into faith or clutching it in fear. You're either letting go of worry about money, doubt about your abilities, and anxiety about tomorrow, or you're dragging all of that mental baggage into the workshop where your tomorrow is being constructed. Think about the hidden truth here. When you lie down rehearsing your financial problems, replaying conversations that upset you, or projecting worst-case scenarios into your future, you're essentially giving your subconscious mind very specific instructions. You're saying, build me more of this, create more situations that match this feeling, arrange my tomorrow to reflect this fear. And your subconscious, being the obedient servant it is, says, yes, I'll get right to work on that. Then you wake up wondering why life keeps delivering the same problems in different packaging. But when you make the conscious decision to release every worry, every doubt, every fear before closing your eyes, when you choose instead to rest in faith that the world is fundamentally abundant, that opportunity is actually limitless, and that you are genuinely prepared to receive what you desire, everything shifts. This isn't wishful thinking. This is you finally working with the natural laws that govern prosperity instead of against them. Faith isn't blind optimism. Faith is the recognition that there are forces at work beyond what your limited perspective can see, and those forces respond to the frequency of your dominant mental state. Now here's where this gets even more revealing. Most people sabotage this process before it can even begin, and they do it through something that seems completely harmless: talking. There's a reason why those who achieve extraordinary results often seem mysteriously quiet about their plans. They've discovered, either through wisdom or painful experience, that creative energy is a finite resource that can be either concentrated or scattered. Every time you announce your goals to someone who hasn't achieved what you're trying to create, you're not gaining support, you're hemorrhaging power. The impact of this energy leak is devastating, yet almost invisible. People remain stuck in the same financial position, the same unfulfilling career, the same limited circumstances, not because they lack work ethic or intelligence, but because they lack mental quiet. They wake up and immediately begin draining their creative reservoir through excessive talking. They compare their beginning to someone else's middle. They complain about circumstances, not realizing that complaint is simply faith in disorder. They tell everyone about their new business idea, their investment strategy, their grand plan, and with each telling, they feel a little rush of validation. But that rush is actually the sensation of your creative energy escaping. Here's what's happening behind the scenes of this behavior. When you announce your goals before they're fully formed in your own mind, you invite the doubt, skepticism, and fear of others directly into your mental space. There, well, that sounds risky, or have you really thought this through? Or I knew someone who tried that and failed becomes a virus in your thinking. Suddenly, you're not building toward your vision. You're defending it. You're explaining it. You're justifying it. And all of that mental activity is pulling energy away from the actual creation process. The most successful people throughout history understood this instinctively. They built their empires, created their innovations, and accumulated their wealth in relative silence. They didn't need to announce their intentions because they were too busy executing them. They didn't seek permission or validation from the crowd because they had learned to trust their inner guidance more than external opinion. Their journey toward success was marked by disciplined focus, not scattered attention. by quiet confidence, not loud proclamation. This is the hidden distinction between those who talk about transformation and those who actually experience it. One group mistakes discussion for progress. The other group understands that real power accumulates in silence. One needs constant external encouragement to stay motivated. The other has cultivated such strong internal conviction that outside opinion becomes irrelevant noise. The revelation here is simple but profound. Your words are not neutral. They carry energy. Every time you speak about your plans, you're either reinforcing your faith or diluting it. Every conversation about your goals either strengthens your resolve or introduces new doubt. The wise decision is to protect your vision like you would protect a flame in the wind, carefully, deliberately, allowing it to grow stronger before exposing it to the elements. Write in the E. Comments. I choose faith over fear. Because understanding this principle intellectually is one thing, but what we need to explore now is how to actually implement this in your daily routine in a way that builds unshakable momentum. There's something you need to understand about belief that will fundamentally change how you navigate your journey towards success. Your belief is not some abstract concept floating around in your mind. It's an actual force, a living energy that shapes your decisions, influences your actions, and ultimately determines your results. And just like any valuable resource, it requires protection. The most dangerous threat you'll face on your path isn't market conditions, economic downturns, or lack of opportunity. It's the disbelief of others, quietly seeping into your consciousness when you least expect it. Here's the hidden truth that most people discover too late. When you share your vision, your faith, your deepest convictions with someone who doesn't possess that same level of belief, something insidious happens. Their skepticism doesn't just bounce off you harmlessly, it infects your certainty. It plants tiny seeds of doubt that begin growing in the background of your mind. You might not notice it immediately. You'll leave that conversation thinking you're still confident, still on track, still committed. But days later, you'll find yourself hesitating where you would have acted, questioning where you would have proceeded, second-guessing the very instincts that were guiding you forward. This isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. This is how the human mind works. We're wired for social connection, for seeking consensus, for wanting validation from our tribe. But this very wiring becomes a vulnerability when you're trying to create something that doesn't yet exist in the visible world. When you're building a vision that others can't see, their inability to perceive it becomes a form of resistance that you have to constantly push against. And that resistance drains your energy, diverts your focus, and weakens your resolve. The revelation here is that you must treat your belief like treasure in a vault. You don't leave treasure sitting out in the open for anyone to examine, critique, or potentially steal. You protect it. You guard it. You share it only with those who have earned the right to see it, those within your trusted circle who possess mutual faith, who understand the principles you're working with, who can strengthen your conviction rather than undermine it. Everyone else gets to see the results when they appear, not the process while it's forming. Now let me take you deeper into something that happens every single night, something so powerful that if you truly grasped its significance, you would approach your evening routine with the same reverence that ancient mystics approached their most sacred rituals. Sleep is not merely rest for your tired body. It's not just your brain shutting down to recharge for tomorrow. Sleep is your entry point into the laboratory of creation, the invisible workshop where tomorrow's reality is being constructed from today's dominant thoughts. Think about what's actually happening during those hours when your conscious mind steps aside and your subconscious takes full control. Every word you heard before closing your eyes, every thought you entertained in those final minutes of wakefulness, every emotion you carried into that twilight state, all of it becomes instruction. Your subconscious mind doesn't filter, doesn't judge, doesn't debate whether these instructions make sense. It simply records them as truth and immediately begins executing them, arranging circumstances, organizing encounters, and aligning events in your favor or against you, depending entirely on what you've programmed. This is the behind-the-scenes mechanism that explains why some people seem to effortlessly attract opportunities while others work themselves to exhaustion and barely make progress. The difference isn't luck, privilege, or even talent. The difference is what they're feeding their subconscious mind in those critical moments before sleep. One person ends their day ruminating on problems, replaying failures, worrying about bills, and essentially programming their internal GPS to navigate toward more of the same. Another person deliberately chooses to end their day with gratitude, clear intention, and unwavering faith, programming their subconscious to seek solutions, recognize opportunities, and move them steadily toward their desired outcome. The impact of this nightly programming cannot be overstated. Your subconscious mind is connected to something far greater than your individual awareness. Call it universal intelligence, the collective unconscious, infinite wisdom, or whatever terminology resonates with you. The label doesn't matter. What matters is understanding that while you sleep, your subconscious is working tirelessly, making connections you couldn't consciously perceive, solving problems that stumped your waking mind, and preparing you for encounters and insights that will seem like coincidence or luck when they appear. This is why the most successful people throughout history have been so particular about their evening routines. They understood intuitively what science is now beginning to confirm, that the state you're in when you fall asleep sets the trajectory for your entire next day, and cumulatively for your entire life. They didn't waste those precious final moments scrolling through negative news, engaging in pointless arguments, or dwelling on what went wrong. They used that time deliberately, consciously, strategically. Your transformation begins the moment you recognize that you have complete control over what you allow into your mind before sleep. You can choose to carry worry, or you can choose to carry faith. You can rehearse your fears, or you can visualize your success. You can focus on what's missing, or you can cultivate gratitude for what's already present and what's on its way. This decision, made consistently night after night, creates a compounding effect that eventually becomes unstoppable momentum. Write in the comments, "I protect my vision," because what I want to show you now is the precise method for using these evening hours to create specific, measurable results in your life, and why most people completely miss the simple technique that makes all the difference. The transformation doesn't announce itself with fanfare or dramatic revelations. It arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the way you experience your first moments of consciousness each morning. You'll wake up one day and notice something subtly different, something you can't quite put your finger on at first. There's a new calm settling over you, a clarity in your thinking that wasn't there before, and perhaps most intriguing, a quiet confidence that feels almost as if you're being guided by an invisible force moving through your life. Now, your rational mind might try to dismiss this as coincidence or imagination, but here's what's actually happening behind the scenes of your awareness. This isn't illusion or wishful thinking. This is universal law, beginning to work through your affairs with the same precision and inevitability that it moves tides and changes seasons. The same force that keeps planets in orbit and causes seeds to sprout is now organizing circumstances in your favor, and you're starting to feel its presence in your daily experience. Think about how nature operates. The ocean doesn't decide whether to respond to the moon's gravitational pull. Trees don't debate whether to grow towards sunlight. Rivers don't question which path will lead them to the sea. They simply align with natural law, and the results unfold automatically, effortlessly, perfectly. Your mind works exactly the same way. When you finally stop resisting these principles and start aligning with them, your life begins flowing with that same effortless precision. The hidden truth here is that your inner state is not separate from your outer circumstances. They're intimately connected, constantly communicating, perpetually mirroring each other. This means that when your inner state fundamentally changes, when you shift from anxiety to calm, from doubt to certainty, from scarcity thinking to abundance consciousness, your outer life has no choice but to follow. It must rearrange itself to match your new internal frequency. This isn't motivational rhetoric. This is observable, repeatable, predictable law in action. Here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. You'll start noticing that you're being guided toward specific ideas at precisely the right moment. A book recommendation appears exactly when you need that particular insight. A conversation happens that opens a door you didn't even know existed. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they reach out that same day with an opportunity. The skeptic calls this coincidence. The person who understands these principles recognizes it as synchronicity, the universe's way of confirming that you're now operating on the correct frequency. The impact of this shift extends into every area of your life, but nowhere is it more noticeable than in your relationship with money. Most people spend their entire lives unconsciously resisting wealth. They say they want it. They work hard for it, but underneath the surface, they're broadcasting fear. Fear that it won't come. Fear that it won't last. Fear that they don't deserve it. Fear that wanting it makes them greedy or shallow. All of this fear creates resistance, and resistance blocks flow. It's like trying to fill a bucket while simultaneously punching holes in the bottom. But when you shift from fear to faith, something remarkable happens. Money begins flowing more easily, not because you've suddenly worked harder or gotten luckier, but because you've removed the invisible barrier that was blocking it. You've stopped pushing it away with your doubts and started attracting it with your certainty. The opportunities that were always around you suddenly become visible. The connections that could have helped you all along suddenly materialize. The ideas that would have made you wealthy were there the whole time, but you couldn't perceive them because your frequency was tuned to the wrong station. Your mind becomes magnetic in the truest sense of the word. Just as a magnet doesn't chase iron filings but naturally attracts them through its inherent properties, your mind begins attracting circumstances, people, and resources that match your dominant mental state. This is why two people can be in the exact same industry, with the same credentials, working the same hours, yet one thrives while the other barely survives. The difference isn't external. It's the magnetic quality of their thoughts, the frequency they're broadcasting into the field of infinite possibility. The journey from struggle to flow isn't about acquiring something you don't have. It's about removing the interference that's been blocking what was always trying to reach you. Every decision you make from this new state of calm confidence carries different weight, different energy, different results. You stop second-guessing yourself into paralysis. You stop seeking permission from people who aren't qualified to grant it. You start trusting the quiet inner, knowing that emerges when your mind is clear and your faith is strong. This is the revelation that changes everything. You're not trying to force the universe to give you what you want. You're aligning yourself with what the universe has been trying to give you all along. The resistance was never external. It was always internal. The obstacle was never the economy, the competition, your circumstances, or your background. The obstacle was the frequency of fear. Drowning out the frequency of faith, and the moment that reversal happens, everything shifts. Write in the comments, "I am aligned." Because what happens when you maintain this alignment consistently, when you protect it and strengthen it daily, creates a momentum that eventually becomes completely unstoppable. And that's exactly where we need to go deeper. Let me share something that might completely shift your perspective on why so many talented, hardworking people never break through to real prosperity. There's a natural principle at work here that most people violate without even realizing it, and understanding this principle is the difference between potential and actual achievement. Think about how a seed grows. You don't plant it and then dig it up every day to check on its progress. You don't expose it to harsh sunlight before it's ready. You don't invite your neighbors over to examine it and offer their opinions on whether it will actually become a tree. The seed requires darkness, protection, and time to develop the root system that will eventually support everything visible above ground. Your goals, your vision, your path to wealth works exactly the same way. The seed of prosperity must grow in darkness, sheltered from the harsh light of skepticism and premature exposure. But here's where most people sabotage their own success without understanding what they're doing. They get excited about an idea, a plan, a new direction, and they immediately feel compelled to share it. They tell their family, their friends, their coworkers, sometimes even complete strangers. And with each telling, they feel a temporary rush of validation, a brief sense of accomplishment, as if talking about the plan is somehow equivalent to executing it. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything once you grasp it. Talk dilutes power, while silence concentrates it. Every time you speak about your unformed vision to someone who hasn't achieved what you're trying to create, you're not building momentum, you're bleeding energy. You're releasing the very force you need to bring that vision into reality. It's like opening a pressurized container before it's finished building the pressure needed for the breakthrough. The energy dissipates, and what could have been explosive forward motion becomes a slow leak that eventually leaves you wondering why nothing ever seems to materialize. Every fortune that has ever been built, every empire that has ever risen, every transformation that has ever occurred began with unspoken conviction held quietly in someone's mind until the moment was right to reveal it. The greatest creators, builders, and innovators throughout history understood this instinctively. They didn't announce their intentions prematurely. They didn't seek approval from the crowd before they had something substantial to show. They protected their vision fiercely, nurturing it in silence until it was strong enough to withstand scrutiny and undeniable enough to speak for itself. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because there's a fundamental reversal of thought that separates those who perpetually struggle from those who seem to effortlessly attract prosperity. And once you see this distinction, you can never unsee it. The poor, and I'm talking about poverty of mindset regardless of current bank balance, operate from one assumption. When I see the results, then I'll believe it's possible. They need proof before faith. They demand evidence before commitment. They want guarantees before taking risks. This seems logical, even prudent on the surface, but it's actually the exact mechanism that keeps them trapped in limitation. The wealthy, those who've mastered the principles of prosperity consciousness, operate from a completely inverted paradigm. Results must appear. They understand that belief doesn't follow evidence. Belief creates evidence. Faith doesn't come after the manifestation. Faith is what triggers the manifestation. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. This is understanding cause and effect at the deepest level. Your belief is the cause. Your circumstances are the effect, not the other way around. This single reversal of thought is the dividing line between scarcity and abundance. It transforms exhausting work into effortless flow. It converts anxious waiting into active faith. It turns desperate hope into concrete evidence. When you truly internalize this shift, when it moves from being a concept you understand intellectually to a truth you live from instinctively, everything in your experience begins to reorganize itself around this new operating system. The impact of this mindset reversal ripples through every decision you make, every action you take, every opportunity you either recognize or overlook. Someone operating from "I'll believe it when I see it" approaches each day looking for proof that their circumstances are changing before they're willing to change their thoughts. They're reactive, waiting for the external world to give them permission to feel confident, abundant, successful. They're essentially giving their power away to circumstances, allowing conditions to dictate their internal state. But someone who has embraced "because I believe it must appear" moves through life as a creator rather than a reactor. They don't wait for circumstances to improve before they think abundant thoughts. They think abundant thoughts knowing that improved circumstances must follow. They don't hope their situation will get better. They decide their situation is already better in the invisible realm, and they simply act from that certainty until the visible realm catches up. This isn't delusion. This is operating from an understanding of how universal law actually functions. The journey from one mindset to the other isn't usually instantaneous. It's a process of catching yourself in the old pattern and consciously choosing the new one again and again until the new pattern becomes your default. Each time you notice yourself waiting for proof before believing, you have an opportunity to flip the script. Each time you catch yourself demanding results before you're willing to have faith, you can make a different choice. And with each repetition of this new choice, you're rewiring the deepest patterns in your subconscious mind. Write in the comments, "Belief creates evidence." Because what I need to show you now is how this principle plays out in the practical, everyday decisions that either move you toward prosperity or keep you stuck in the same patterns, and why understanding the mechanics behind this makes all the difference. There's a mechanism inside your mind that's been working perfectly your entire life, and the reason most people stay stuck isn't because this mechanism is broken. It's because they don't realize they've been using it to create the exact opposite of what they want. Your subconscious mind operates like the most sophisticated recording device ever created, and it has one simple job. Whatever you impress upon it with emotion and repetition, it must express outwardly. No exceptions, no negotiations, no favoritism. This is pure law, as reliable as gravity, as predictable as sunrise. For years, maybe decades, you've been impressing fear onto this recording device. Fear of not having enough, fear of failure, fear of what others think, fear that you're not worthy, not capable, not destined for anything beyond mediocrity. And your subconscious, being the faithful servant it is, said, "I understand. You want more experiences that confirm these fears. Let me arrange that for you." And it did, perfectly, consistently, without fail. Every situation that proved your fears were justified, every circumstance that validated your doubts, every outcome that matched your anxious expectations, all of it was your subconscious mind simply doing its job, expressing outwardly what you impressed upon it inwardly. But here's the revelation that changes everything. The same mechanism that has been faithfully creating limitation can just as faithfully create abundance. The subconscious doesn't have preferences. It doesn't judge whether your instructions are good or bad, empowering or destructive. It simply executes whatever program you run with emotional intensity and consistent repetition. This means that if you begin impressing certainty onto your subconscious with the same consistency that you've been impressing fear, it will obey just as faithfully. Not because you've suddenly become special or lucky, but because you finally learned to work with the operating system that's been running your life all along. The transformation happens when you shift from unconscious programming to conscious direction. Most people are running mental programs they didn't even choose, patterns inherited from parents, absorbed from culture, adopted from past disappointments. They're not deliberately creating their experience, they're defaulting to old programming. But the moment you become aware of this process, you gain the ability to rewrite the code. You can begin deliberately impressing new thoughts, new beliefs, new expectations onto your subconscious mind, and you can do it with emotion and repetition until these new patterns become your new default. Now let me show you how this translates into something practical, something you can implement immediately, something that will begin shifting your results from the very first day you apply it. When you rise in the morning, you have a choice about which identity you're going to step into. Most people wake up and immediately slip back into the same old self, the one defined by past limitations, current struggles, and familiar doubts. They carry yesterday's problems into today's possibilities. They dress the same, think the same, speak the same, act the same, and then wonder why they get the same results. But what if you approached each morning differently? What if you woke up and made the conscious decision to act as though the work of transformation has already been completed? Because here's the hidden truth. In the realm where all creation begins, it has already been completed. The moment you made the decision to change, the moment you aligned your thoughts with prosperity consciousness, the moment you chose faith over fear, the transformation occurred in the invisible dimension of cause. Now all that remains is for it to manifest in the visible dimension of effect, and that manifestation accelerates dramatically when you start living as if it's already done. This isn't pretending or self-deception. This is understanding that your external reality is always working to catch up with your internal conviction. When you walk with the confidence of someone who knows a secret the world doesn't understand, when you make decisions from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, when you speak with the quiet certainty of someone who has already seen how this story ends, you're not faking it. You're aligning with truth at a higher level than most people can perceive. The impact of this shift in how you carry yourself is profound and immediate. People respond to you differently when you're operating from certainty rather than desperation. Opportunities appear that were invisible when you were vibrating at the frequency of lack. Doors open that remained closed when you were approaching them from doubt. What others will call luck, you'll recognize as law in action. You'll see that nothing about your success was random or fortunate. It was the inevitable result of aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with the principles that govern prosperity. This is where your journey shifts from struggle to flow, from hoping to knowing, from trying to being. You stop working to become someone successful and start being someone successful who happens to be building visible proof of that reality. The difference is subtle, but absolutely crucial. One approach is exhausting because you're constantly fighting against your own self-image. The other is effortless because you're simply allowing your external circumstances to match the internal identity you've already claimed. Every decision you make from this new state carries different weight. When you need to have a difficult conversation, you approach it as someone who already knows they're respected and valued. When you face a financial challenge, you handle it as someone who already knows abundance is their natural state. When you encounter an obstacle, you navigate it as someone who already knows that every apparent setback is actually set up for something better. This isn't arrogance. This is alignment with how universal law actually operates. Write in the comments, "I embody my transformation now." Because what we need to explore next is how to maintain this state consistently, how to protect it from the inevitable doubts and external pressures that will try to pull you back into old patterns. And that's where most people lose their momentum. The single most critical skill you need to master on this journey isn't about acquiring new knowledge or learning complex strategies. It's about protecting what you've already built internally. Your new state of mind, this shift from fear to faith, from doubt to certainty, from scarcity to abundance consciousness. This is not just another interesting idea you picked up. This is actual wealth. This is the foundation upon which every external result will be constructed. And just as you would guard physical gold in a vault, you must protect this mental state with the same level of vigilance and intention. Here's what most people don't understand until it's too late. Your transformation is fragile in its early stages. It's like a flame that's just been lit, powerful in potential, but vulnerable to being extinguished by the slightest breeze of doubt. The world around you, full of people operating from completely different paradigms, will unconsciously try to pull you back into the collective mindset of limitation, not because they're malicious, but because your new state of certainty makes them uncomfortable. It challenges their beliefs about what's possible. It forces them to question their own choices. And rather than doing that difficult inner work themselves, it's easier for them to convince you that you're being unrealistic, that you need to be practical, that you should lower your expectations. This is where you must become absolutely unwavering in your conviction. A mind that oscillates between belief and disbelief cancels its own power. It's like trying to drive forward while simultaneously pressing the gas and the brake. You're generating tremendous energy, but going nowhere. Every time you allow doubt to creep back in, every time you let skepticism override your certainty, every time you waver in your faith because external circumstances haven't caught up yet, you're resetting the creative process back to zero. The subconscious receives mixed signals and cannot execute clearly. The universe responds to confusion with more confusion. The hidden truth here is that consistency of thought is more powerful than intensity of effort. You can work 18 hours a day, but if your mind is bouncing between confidence and doubt, belief and fear, abundance and scarcity, you'll exhaust yourself and create very little. But if you maintain unwavering certainty, even if you work fewer hours, even if your actions seem small, you're building unstoppable momentum in the invisible realm that must eventually manifest in the visible world. Now let me share something that will accelerate your transformation beyond what you might think possible. There's a practice that the most successful people throughout history have used, often without even realizing why it worked so well. They understood intuitively that the mind operates like a garden. Whatever seeds you plant consistently will eventually dominate the landscape. And the most powerful time for planting these seeds is in those final moments before sleep, when your conscious mind's defenses are down and your subconscious is wide open to receive. This is why nightly repetition of truth becomes so transformative. It's not about mindlessly repeating words. It's about deliberately impressing specific beliefs onto your subconscious mind during the window of maximum receptivity. When you listen to these principles each night, when you allow these truths to be the last thoughts occupying your mind before you drift into sleep, something remarkable happens. The repetition builds neural pathways. The consistency creates new default patterns. The emotional connection to these ideas deepens until they stop being concepts you're trying to believe and become truths you simply know. Repetition builds faith, and faith builds reality. This isn't a metaphor. This is the actual mechanism through which all lasting change occurs. The first night you do this, it's just information. The 10th night, it's starting to feel familiar. The 30th night, it's becoming conviction. The 100th night, it's your new identity. And somewhere along that journey, without you even noticing the exact moment it happened, your external reality began reorganizing itself to match this new internal state. The impact of this practice manifests in ways that others will notice before you fully comprehend it yourself. People will start commenting on something different about you. They'll mention the calm in your eyes, the certainty in your tone, the inexplicable confidence you carry even when discussing challenges. They'll sense that you know something they don't, that you're operating from a different playbook, that you've accessed some hidden truth that's transforming how you move through the world. And they'll ask you about it. They'll want to know what changed, what you're doing differently, what secret you've discovered. And here's where you must exercise tremendous discipline. Tell no one about your practice. This isn't about being secretive for its own sake. This is about understanding that the moment you explain your inner work to someone who isn't ready to receive it, you invite their doubt into your sacred space. Their well-meaning skepticism, their logical objections, their concerns about whether this really works, all of that becomes contamination in your mental environment. You've worked so hard to cultivate faith, and in one conversation with someone operating from fear, you can undo weeks of progress. Let your results speak for themselves. Let the changes in your circumstances, your opportunities, your prosperity become the testimony. When people notice your transformation, smile knowingly and redirect the conversation. When they press for answers, simply say, "You've been focusing on your mindset," and leave it at that. The details of your practice, the principles you're working with, the nightly repetition that's rewiring your consciousness, these remain yours to protect, yours to nurture, yours to guard like the treasure they truly are. Your journey from where you were to where you're going happens largely in silence, in the quiet hours of night when you're deliberately programming your subconscious, in the morning moments when you're stepping into your transformed identity, in the daily decisions, where you choose faith over fear regardless of what circumstances currently suggest. This behind-the-scenes work is where the real magic happens, and it must remain behind the scenes until the evidence is undeniable. Write in the comments, "My practice remains sacred," because what I need to reveal now is how this internal work begins manifesting in tangible, measurable ways in your external world, and why understanding the timeline of manifestation prevents most people from giving up right before their breakthrough. There's a natural principle that governs all manifestation, and understanding this will save you from the frustration that causes most people to abandon their dreams right before they're about to materialize. Success doesn't arrive with trumpets and announcements. It doesn't burst onto the scene demanding attention. It emerges quietly, almost invisibly at first, growing in the background of your life while you continue doing the internal work. This is why you must let people see your fruits, not your roots. The transformation happening beneath the surface, the daily practices, the mental discipline, the faith you're cultivating, all of that remains hidden, protected, sacred. What the world gets to see is the result when it's ready to be revealed. Think about how a tree grows. It doesn't send out daily updates about its progress. It doesn't announce that it added another ring of growth or extended its root system deeper into the earth. It simply does the work of being a tree, drawing nutrients from the soil, reaching towards sunlight, following the blueprint encoded in its nature. And then one season, people notice. That tree that was once small is now towering, providing shade, bearing fruit, standing as undeniable evidence of the quiet work that was happening all along. This is exactly how prosperity comes into your life when you're working with these principles correctly, quietly, steadily, inevitably, until one day you look around and realize that what once seemed impossible has become your ordinary reality. The hidden truth here is that most people sabotage their own success by measuring progress in the wrong dimension. They're looking for immediate external changes while the real transformation is happening internally. They want to see their bank account shift, their circumstances improve, their opportunities multiply, and when these things don't happen on their desired timeline, they assume the principles aren't working. But that's like planting a seed and digging it up 3 days later to check if it's growing. The very act of constant checking, of impatient measuring, of anxious monitoring, disrupts the process that was already unfolding perfectly. What you need to understand is that there's a natural gestation period for every level of manifestation. Small shifts happen quickly. Medium transformations take longer. Major life changes require sustained faith over extended periods. This isn't a flaw in the system. This is the system working exactly as it's designed to work. The universe is arranging circumstances, preparing connections, orchestrating events behind the scenes in ways your conscious mind couldn't possibly coordinate. Your job isn't to manage how it happens. Your job is to maintain unwavering faith that it is happening, even when you can't yet see the evidence. Now let me reveal something that will fundamentally shift how you approach this entire journey. Prosperity dwells in silence. Because all enduring things are born quietly. This is not philosophy. This is observable natural law. Every process of creation in nature follows this pattern. Seeds split beneath soil where no eye can witness. Tides shift according to forces invisible to those standing on the shore. Dawn appears without fanfare, without announcement, simply emerging as the inevitable result of the Earth's rotation. Nothing in nature advertises its processes. Everything simply follows its internal blueprint, and manifestation occurs in perfect timing. Your prosperity operates by these same laws. When you're constantly talking about what you're trying to create, when you're explaining your vision to everyone who will listen, when you're seeking validation and approval from the crowd, you're violating the principle of silent gestation. You're exposing the seed to harsh light before it's ready. You're interrupting the quiet process of formation with the noise of explanation. And while this might feel like you're building momentum or gaining support, you're actually dispersing the very energy needed for manifestation. The universe responds not to speech, but to vibration, not to chatter, but to conviction. This distinction is absolutely crucial. You can talk about prosperity all day long, use all the right words, repeat every affirmation you've ever heard. But if underneath that verbal activity there's doubt, if beneath those spoken intentions there's fear, if your vibrational frequency doesn't match your verbal declarations, nothing manifests. The universe isn't listening to what you say, it's responding to what you are. Your being, not your speaking, is what creates your reality. This is why the person who quietly holds unshakable conviction attracts opportunities effortlessly. while the person who constantly announces their goals but carries internal doubt struggles endlessly. The silent one is broadcasting a clear, strong, consistent signal. The loud one is creating static, interference, mixed frequencies that confuse the very forces that could help them. Your internal state, your vibrational frequency, your energetic signature. This is what draws circumstances to you or repels them. And this is cultivated in silence, not in conversation. The impact of truly understanding this principle transforms your entire approach to building prosperity. You stop needing to convince others. You stop seeking permission or approval. You stop measuring your progress by external validation. Instead, you turn inward. You strengthen your conviction through nightly practice. You maintain your vision through daily alignment. And you trust the invisible process that's orchestrating your visible results. You become like nature itself, quiet, certain, unstoppable. When people eventually notice your transformation, when your success becomes too obvious to ignore, when they start asking how you did it, you'll understand why silence was so essential. The work that happened in the unseen realm, the faith you maintained when nothing was visible, the conviction you protected from skepticism and doubt, all of that was the foundation. And foundations, by definition, remain hidden beneath what they support. Let them see the structure you've built. Let them admire the results you've created. Let them wonder at the transformation you've undergone. But the sacred process, the inner work, the principles you're operating from, these remain yours. Write in the comments, I trust the invisible process. Because what we need to explore now is how to recognize the early signals that your manifestation is already in motion, even before external evidence appears, and why missing these signals causes people to give up right before their breakthrough becomes visible. There's a fundamental divide that separates humanity into two distinct groups, and once you recognize which group you've been operating in, you'll understand why your results have been what they've been. On one side, you have people who announce their plans to anyone who will listen. They're excited about their ideas, eager to share their vision, constantly explaining what they're going to do, where they're headed, how it's all going to unfold. They live for admiration, for the momentary validation that comes when someone says, "That sounds amazing," or "I can't wait to see that happen." But here's what's actually occurring beneath the surface of all that enthusiastic sharing. They're losing energy. Through explanation. Every conversation about their unmanifested dreams becomes a slow leak in their creative reservoir. On the other side, you have people who create quietly. They're not antisocial or secretive in a negative sense. They simply understand that their energy is precious and that real achievement requires concentrated focus, not dispersed attention. They live for achievement itself, not for the applause that might come from announcing achievement before it exists. And because they're not constantly explaining, defending, or justifying their vision to others, they gain power through concentration. All of that energy that could have been scattered through conversation gets channeled directly into manifestation. They become causes, originating forces that shape reality rather than echoes, merely repeating what others think is possible or acceptable. The hidden truth here is that your words carry actual energy, and you have a finite amount of creative energy available. At any given time, when you speak about your plans prematurely, you're not just sharing information, you're transferring the energetic charge of that idea from your internal world to the external atmosphere. That initial surge of excitement you feel about a new project, that electric sense of possibility, that conviction that this is going to change everything, that's actual creative fuel. And when you release it through premature explanation, you get a temporary high from the social validation. But you've just burned the fuel you needed for actual execution. This is why so many people are full of great ideas that never materialize. They talk themselves out of creative energy before they can build themselves into creative results. The transformation from announcer to quiet creator is one of the most powerful shifts you can make on this journey. It requires you to become comfortable with being misunderstood, with people thinking you're not ambitious because you're not constantly broadcasting your goals with sitting in silence while others chatter about their plans. But this discomfort is the price of power. This is where you trade approval for achievement, recognition for results, noise for impact. And once you cross that threshold, once you truly embrace the discipline of creating in silence, you'll never go back to the exhausting pattern of explaining yourself to people who couldn't help you even if they wanted to. Now I want to go even deeper into what makes this possible, because there's a quality that separates those who achieve extraordinary things from those who remain perpetually frustrated, and that quality is patience. Not the passive kind of patience where you're simply waiting and hoping. I'm talking about active patience, the deep knowing that everything of value grows unseen first, and the willingness to honor that natural timeline without anxiety or doubt. This is roots before fruit, faith before fortune, stillness before success. Every time, without exception, following the same sequence that governs all creation. The greatest achievements in human history, every bridge that now spans impossible distances, every fortune that seemed to appear overnight but actually took years of invisible preparation, every breakthrough that changed the world, all of it began in the invisible realm. Before the first stone was laid, before the first dollar was earned, before the first public recognition arrived, there was someone sitting in silence, with a vision that no one else could see. They held that vision through doubt, through setbacks, through the mockery of those who couldn't perceive what they were building. They understood that the external manifestation is always the last step in a process that begins internally. This is the revelation that changes your relationship with time itself. Most people think they're behind, that they should be further along by now, that their success should have arrived already. They look at their current circumstances and feel discouraged because they don't yet reflect the vision they hold. But they're measuring progress in the wrong dimension. The real question isn't, where are my results? The real question is, how strong is my faith? How clear is my vision? How unwavering is my conviction? Because those internal qualities are the actual seeds, and seeds always grow in darkness before they break through to light. Every decision you make to remain patient, to trust the process, to hold your vision without demanding immediate proof, these are the decisions that separate temporary enthusiasm from lasting transformation. The person who needs to see progress every single day will abandon their dreams the moment external circumstances don't cooperate. But the person who understands that the most important work is happening in the invisible realm, who trusts that their consistent faith is arranging circumstances behind the scenes, who knows that stillness and silence are not inactivity, but the highest form of creative power, that person becomes unstoppable. Your journey requires you to become comfortable with the gap between decision and manifestation, between vision and visibility, between faith and form. This gap is not emptiness. It's the creative space where universal intelligence is working on your behalf, organizing people, arranging opportunities, coordinating events in ways that your conscious mind could never orchestrate. Your impatience doesn't speed this process up. Your anxiety doesn't make it more efficient. Your constant checking and measuring doesn't help. What helps is unwavering faith, disciplined focus, and the patient certainty that what you're building in silence will emerge in strength. Write in the comments, I honor the invisible work. Because what I need to show you now is how to maintain this patient certainty even when everything around you seems to contradict your vision, and why this is the exact moment when most people abandon their dreams right before they're about to break through. There's a hidden workforce operating in your life that never takes a break, never clocks out, never stops building. And the tragedy is that most people go their entire lives completely unaware that this workforce even exists, let alone how to direct it toward their desired outcomes. While you're awake, making decisions, taking actions, navigating your daily challenges, you're essentially shaping appearances, the surface level of your reality, the immediately visible aspects of your life. But what happens while you sleep, During those hours when your conscious mind steps aside and your subconscious takes complete control, that's what shapes destiny. This isn't poetic language. This is the actual mechanism through which your deepest transformation occurs. Your subconscious mind never stops working. While your body rests, while your conscious thoughts quiet down, while you're completely unaware of what's happening, your subconscious is extraordinarily busy. It's taking your dominant thoughts, the beliefs you've impressed upon it through emotion and repetition, and it's arranging conditions in your external world to match them. It's orchestrating encounters with specific people. It's highlighting opportunities that align with your mental frequency. It's guiding you toward circumstances that will either validate your fears or confirm your faith, depending entirely on which seeds you've been planting. This is why two people can sleep in the same house, wake up in the same city, face the same economic conditions, and yet one person's day unfolds with synchronicity and flow, while the other encounters obstacle after obstacle. The difference isn't luck or favoritism from the universe. The difference is what they programmed into their subconscious mind before surrendering to sleep. One person ended their day in worry, replaying problems, dwelling on lack, essentially giving their subconscious instructions to find more evidence of limitation. The other person ended their day in gratitude, visualizing success, affirming abundance, essentially programming their internal GPS to navigate toward prosperity. The hidden truth here is that you have a choice every single night about what blueprint you're handing to your subconscious mind. That last thought before sleep, that final emotion you're holding as you drift off, that's not just a random mental event. It's the actual blueprint for creation. Your mind operates like a workshop, and whatever materials you give it in that final hour, it multiplies throughout the night. If you give it fear, it produces more situations tomorrow that will trigger fear. If you give it certainty, it produces more experiences tomorrow that will confirm certainty. The subconscious doesn't judge whether your instructions are beneficial or destructive. It simply accepts and executes. Think about the profound impact this has on the trajectory of your entire life. Most people are unconsciously programming themselves for struggle every single night. They scroll through social media before bed, filling their mind with other people's curated highlight reels and feeling inadequate by comparison. They watch news that emphasizes danger, crisis, and scarcity. They review their financial problems one more time, as if rehearsing them will somehow solve them. They fall asleep in the middle of anxious thoughts about tomorrow's challenges, and then they wake up wondering why their life feels like an uphill battle, never realizing they've been programming that battle into existence every single night. But when you understand this mechanism, when you take conscious control of that critical window before sleep, everything changes. You begin treating those final minutes of wakefulness as sacred time, as the most important programming session of your entire day. You deliberately choose thoughts that align with the reality you're creating. You visualize your desired outcomes as though they're already accomplished. You speak affirmations that impress certainty upon your subconscious. You cultivate gratitude for what's coming as though it's already here. And then you release it all, trusting that your subconscious will work through the night to make it so. What you plant at night, you literally meet in your world the following day. Not always in obvious, dramatic ways, but in subtle shifts of perception, unexpected encounters, sudden insights, doors that open, seemingly by chance. You'll start noticing that the right person calls at exactly the right time, that the solution to a problem appears in an overheard conversation, that you feel inexplicably drawn to take a different route, and that deviation leads to an opportunity. These aren't coincidences. These are the results of your subconscious mind working on the blueprint you provided the night before. The revelation that transforms everything is understanding that you're not a passive recipient of whatever life randomly delivers. You're an active programmer, inputting instructions every single night into the most powerful creative force you'll ever have access to. The person who complains that nothing ever works out for them is unknowingly programming that exact experience. The person who affirms that everything is working in their favor is consciously creating that reality, Same universe, same laws, different programming, different results. Now let me reveal something that will take this even deeper. Your subconscious mind is connected to something far beyond your individual awareness. It's your bridge to infinite intelligence, to the collective field of possibility, to the source of all creativity and innovation throughout human history. When you program it correctly before sleep, you're not just rearranging your personal circumstances. You're tapping into a wellspring of insight and inspiration that's been accessible to every genius, every innovator, every person who ever created something extraordinary from what seemed like nothing. This is why the greatest inventors often reported that their breakthrough ideas came to them in dreams or upon waking. They weren't just lucky. They had learned to pose questions to their subconscious before sleep and trust that answers would emerge. They understood that the conscious mind, with all its limitations and conditioning, can only rearrange what it already knows. But the subconscious, connected to infinite intelligence, can deliver completely new solutions, revolutionary ideas, transformative insights that the conscious mind could never have produced through logical thinking alone. Your nightly practice becomes the difference between living reactively and creating deliberately, between hoping circumstances improve and actively shaping them, between wondering why success eludes you and understanding exactly how to program it into existence. This is not wishful thinking or New Age fantasy. This is understanding the operating system of consciousness and learning to use it with precision and intention. Write in the comments, "I program my destiny nightly," because what we need to explore now is the specific techniques for maximizing this nightly programming session and why the way you structure your evening routine determines whether you wake up moving toward your goals or away from them. There's a law operating in your mind that's so precise, so mechanical, so utterly reliable that once you understand it, you'll never approach your evening routine the same way again. This is the law of mental continuity, and it states simply that whatever occupies your final thought before rest becomes the pattern your subconscious builds upon through the night. This isn't a suggestion or a possibility. This is absolute law, as dependable as gravity, as consistent as the sunrise. Sleep worrying about debt, and your subconscious interprets that as a command to organize more circumstances that create debt. Sleep. In gratitude for increase, and it receives that as instruction to arrange opportunities for increase. Same mind, same night, completely opposite results based solely on what thought you carried into sleep. Here's what most people fail to grasp. Your subconscious doesn't understand the difference between what you want and what you fear. It only recognizes the dominant emotional charge of your thoughts. When you lie awake at night, anxiously reviewing your financial problems, thinking you're being responsible or realistic by facing your challenges, your subconscious doesn't hear, "I want to solve this problem." It hears, "This is what matters to me. This is what I'm focused on. Give me more of this." And being the faithful servant it is, it immediately begins working throughout the night to deliver exactly that. More situations that match the frequency of financial anxiety. The hidden truth that transforms everything is understanding that your subconscious mind continues whatever mental pattern you were running when you fell asleep. If your last waking moments are consumed with worry, that worry becomes the background program running all night long, influencing your dreams, affecting your sleep quality, and most importantly, setting up your mental and emotional state for the following day. You wake up already feeling anxious before anything has even happened because your subconscious spent 8 hours reinforcing that pattern. This is why some people seem to wake up defeated. Before their day even begins, they programmed defeat the night before. But the person who has learned to harness this law operates completely differently. They understand that those final moments before sleep are not throwaway time to be filled with whatever random thoughts happen to be present. Those moments are the control panel for their entire existence. They deliberately, consciously, intentionally choose thoughts of prosperity, gratitude, success, and peace. They replay victories instead of failures. They visualize desired outcomes instead of feared scenarios. They affirm abundance instead of rehearsing lack. And their subconscious, receiving these instructions in that highly receptive state, says, "Yes, I understand. This is the reality we're creating. Let me arrange circumstances accordingly." The impact of this single shift in how you use your evening hours cannot be overstated. You're not just improving your mood or helping yourself sleep better, though both of those happen naturally. You're literally reprogramming the creative mechanism that's generating your future. Every night becomes an opportunity to plant new seeds, to reinforce new patterns, to strengthen new beliefs. And with each repetition, those patterns become more deeply embedded, more automatically activated, more powerfully expressed in your waking life. Now let me reveal something that might seem small but holds extraordinary power. Your last 5 minutes before sleep are the most sacred 5 minutes of your entire day. Not your morning routine, as important as that is. Not your work hours, as productive as those might be. These final 5 minutes hold more creative potential than all your waking hours combined, because this is when the gateway between your conscious and subconscious mind is wide open, when suggestions bypass all critical filters and plant directly into the fertile soil of your deeper mind. They determine the quality of your night and the character of your morning, which means they're essentially determining the quality and character of your entire life, one night at a time. Think about how most people spend these precious 5 minutes. Scrolling mindlessly through their phone, consuming whatever content the algorithm feeds them, watching television shows designed to create emotional hooks that keep them watching, arguing with their partner about trivial matters, reviewing tomorrow's to-do list and feeling overwhelmed before the day even starts. Or worst of all, lying in darkness replaying everything that went wrong today, every mistake made, every opportunity missed, every word they wish they hadn't said. They're essentially using the most powerful programming window of their day to install malware into their operating system. But when you recognize these 5 minutes for what they truly are, a sacred opportunity to consciously direct your subconscious mind toward your desired reality, everything changes. You begin protecting this time fiercely. You create rituals around it. You eliminate anything that would contaminate this space with negativity, doubt, or fear. Instead, you fill these final moments with thoughts of prosperity, with visualizations of success, with gratitude for what's already present and what's on its way. You speak affirmations quietly to yourself, impressing certainty upon your subconscious. You review the day's victories, no matter how small, reinforcing the pattern of success. You cultivate feelings of peace, security, and abundance, knowing that these feelings will become the blueprint for tomorrow's creation. The transformation that occurs when you consistently honor this practice is profound and cumulative. The first night, you might notice you sleep more peacefully. The first week, you start waking up with more clarity and calm. The first month, you begin noticing synchronicities and opportunities appearing with increasing frequency. The first year, you look back and barely recognize the person you were, because the consistent nightly programming has fundamentally rewired your consciousness and, consequently, your entire reality. This is the behind-the-scenes work that no one sees, but everyone eventually experiences the results of. While others are wasting this sacred time on mental garbage, you're using it to build an empire in the invisible realm. While they're programming limitation, you're programming expansion. While they're reinforcing old patterns that keep them stuck, you're installing new patterns that propel you forward. Same 5 minutes, radically different outcomes. Write in the comments, "I claim my sacred 5 minutes." Because what I need to show you now is how to structure these final moments for maximum impact, and why the sequence of thoughts you choose matters just as much as the thoughts themselves. There's something remarkable that happens when you stop trying to force your way through life and start recognizing the natural rhythms that govern all creation. Look at nature for just a moment, and you'll see the pattern everywhere. The tide doesn't fight against the shore, desperately pushing and straining to reach the sand. It simply flows in its appointed rhythm, advancing and receding with perfect timing, shaped by forces far greater than itself. The sun doesn't anxiously hurry to rise each morning, worried that it might be late. It follows its path with absolute precision, appearing exactly when the rotation of the earth brings it into view. Everything in nature operates according to rhythm, and success in your life has its own rhythm too. The hidden truth that most people miss is that struggle is not a requirement for achievement. It's actually a sign that you're out of sync with the natural rhythm of manifestation. When you're forcing, straining, pushing against resistance at every turn, you're not demonstrating determination or work ethic. You're demonstrating that you haven't yet learned to move in harmony with the divine order that's trying to carry you forward. Learning to recognize this rhythm, to feel it, to align with it, transforms your entire experience from exhausting struggle into effortless flow. Not because the challenges disappear, but because you're no longer fighting against the current that could be moving you toward your destination. Think about the people you know who seem to accomplish extraordinary things without the drama and stress that others experience. They're not necessarily smarter or more talented or working longer hours. What they've discovered, often without being able to articulate it, is how to move in rhythm with the natural laws that govern success. They act when action is appropriate. They rest when rest is required. They plant in the proper season and harvest when the crop is ready. They don't rush the process or delay beyond the right moment. They've developed an internal sense of timing that keeps them synchronized with the rhythm of opportunity. And that synchronization makes everything easier. The impact of this understanding on your daily decisions is transformative. Instead of constantly asking, "Why isn't this happening faster?" you start asking, "Am I in harmony with the natural timing of this manifestation?" Instead of feeling anxious about delays, you recognize that what you're calling delay might actually be perfect timing that your limited perspective can't yet perceive. Instead of forcing doors that aren't ready to open, you trust that the right doors will open at exactly the right moment if you maintain your alignment and keep moving in rhythm with your vision. Now, I want to go even deeper into the mechanism that makes this rhythm so powerful, because there's a law at work here that explains why some people seem to attract opportunity effortlessly, while others work themselves to exhaustion and barely make progress. This is the law of mental resonance, and it operates on a simple principle. Your mind attracts conditions of similar vibration. Just as a tuning fork will cause another tuning fork of the same frequency to vibrate in response, your mental and emotional state broadcasts a frequency that attracts matching circumstances, people, and events into your experience. When your thoughts consistently move in harmony with peace, confidence, and purpose, when you maintain that internal state, regardless of external circumstances, life responds by bringing you opportunities that match that frequency. You'll notice that peaceful people appear in your path. Confident collaborators emerge. Purposeful projects present themselves. This isn't coincidence or luck. This is resonance. Your internal frequency is calling forth its external match. The universe isn't playing favorites. It's simply responding to the signal you're broadcasting. But here's what most people don't realize until they've wasted years in frustration. Discord in thought creates discord in circumstances with the same precision. When your mind is chaotic, jumping from worry to hope, to fear to excitement and back to worry, you're broadcasting static, not a clear signal. The universe receives this confused frequency and responds with confused circumstances. Opportunities appear, but fall through. People show interest, but disappear. Progress happens, but then reverses. The external chaos is simply mirroring the internal chaos, showing you in visible form what's happening in your invisible mental realm. The revelation here is that you don't need to change your circumstances to change your life. You need to change your frequency, and your circumstances will automatically reorganize to match it. This is why two people can be in identical situations, facing the same challenges, working in the same industry, yet one experiences synchronicity and flow while the other encounters obstacle after obstacle. The difference isn't in their external reality, after obstacle. The difference isn't in their external reality, it's in their internal resonance. One is broadcasting harmony, the other discord. One is aligned with the rhythm of success, the other is fighting against it. Your journey toward prosperity becomes exponentially easier when you understand that you're not trying to manipulate reality or convince the universe to give you what you want. You're learning to tune your internal frequency to match the frequency of what you desire. You're adjusting your mental and emotional state to resonate with abundance, success, peace, and opportunity. And when that resonance is strong and consistent, when you maintain it through daily practice and nightly reinforcement, the external world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. This is why your evening practice is so crucial. It's not just about programming your subconscious for the next day. It's about establishing and maintaining the resonant frequency that will attract your desired reality. When you end each day in peace rather than anxiety, in gratitude rather than complaint, in certainty rather than doubt, you're setting your internal tuning fork to the frequency of prosperity. And throughout the night, while your conscious mind rests, that frequency continues broadcasting, continues attracting, continues organizing your world around the vibration you've chosen. The transformation that occurs when you master this principle of resonance is nothing short of miraculous, though it's not a miracle at all. It's simply law in action. You stop wondering why good things happen to other people and start recognizing that you're now one of those people to whom good things flow naturally. You stop feeling like you're swimming upstream and start experiencing the ease of moving with the current. You stop trying to force outcomes and start allowing them to unfold in their natural rhythm. Write in the comments, "I am in harmony with my desires." Because what we need to explore now is how to recognize when you've fallen out of rhythm, how to quickly realign yourself before too much momentum is lost, and why this ability to self-correct is what separates temporary success from lasting transformation. There's a test that comes to everyone who's working with these principles, and how you respond to this test determines whether you break through to lasting success or fall back into the old patterns that kept you stuck. The test arrives when you've been doing everything right, maintaining your nightly practice, guarding your thoughts, staying in alignment, yet your external circumstances don't seem to be changing as quickly as you expected. This is the moment when you must make a critical choice. Will you trust the unseen more than appearances, or will you let visible delay convince you that nothing is working? Here's the hidden truth that separates those who achieve their vision from those who abandon it right before breakthrough. The harvest may not be visible above ground, but it's forming beneath the surface with absolute certainty. Every seed you've planted through your disciplined thoughts, every night you've programmed your subconscious with faith instead of fear, every moment you've chosen certainty over doubt, all of it is working in the invisible realm, developing root systems that will eventually support extraordinary visible results. But if you judge the process solely by what you can see right now, you'll make the devastating mistake of uprooting the seed right before it's ready to break through the soil. The greatest danger in this stage of your journey is letting outer delay create inner doubt. This is where most people lose everything they've been building. They see that their bank account hasn't changed yet, or the opportunity they were expecting hasn't materialized on their timeline, or the transformation isn't as dramatic as they imagined it would be by now. And instead of recognizing this as a natural part of the gestation process, they interpret it as evidence that the principles don't work, that they're not doing it right, or that they're somehow not worthy of success. That doubt, once it enters your mind, breaks the rhythm you've been carefully establishing. And once the rhythm is broken, what was flowing as effortless faith suddenly becomes exhausting effort. You shift from attracting to chasing, from allowing to forcing, from trust to strain. The impact of this shift is immediate and devastating. The moment you stop trusting the invisible process and start demanding visible proof, you change your vibrational frequency from certainty to desperation. And desperation repels the very opportunities that certainty attracts. You can feel it in your body. The tension returns, the anxiety creeps back, The old familiar fear starts whispering that maybe you should give up on this vision and be realistic. But that voice isn't wisdom. It's the death rattle of your old identity trying to survive by convincing you to abandon your new one. This is where you must become absolutely unwavering in your commitment to trust. Not blind trust that ignores reality, but informed trust that understands how manifestation actually works. The physical realm is always the last to show change because it's the densest dimension of reality. The transformation begins in your consciousness, moves into your emotions, shifts your actions, and only then reorganizes your circumstances. If you're expecting circumstances to change before your consciousness has fully transformed, you're reversing the natural order and guaranteeing frustration. Now let me reveal something about the two different ways people move through the world and why one leads to exhaustion while the other leads to accomplishment. The unsuccessful act out of panic. When they don't see immediate results, they frantically start changing strategies, seeking new information, asking everyone for advice, jumping from one approach to another. They're like someone digging multiple shallow holes instead of one deep well, never staying in one place long enough to strike water. Their activity is intense, but it's chaotic, unfocused, driven by fear rather than guided by wisdom. But the successful act from rhythm. They've learned that faith and patience are not separate qualities, but brothers born of the same understanding. The understanding that universal law works on its own timeline, not yours. They know that the power to wait calmly, to hold your vision without demanding immediate proof, to stay in alignment even when appearances suggest you should panic. This power is infinitely greater than the power to rush blindly toward any opportunity that presents itself. Because those who act in harmony with law, who move when the inner signal says move and rest when wisdom says rest, never miss their moment. Not because they're lucky, but because they're in sync with the rhythm that orchestrates all opportunity. Think about what this means for your daily decisions. When you're operating from panic, every delay feels like a crisis. Every closed door seems like rejection. Every challenge appears as evidence that you're failing. But when you're operating from rhythm, from that place of calm faith paired with patient action, the same delays feel like divine timing. The same closed doors become protection from what wasn't meant for you. The same challenges transform into preparation for the success that's coming. The transformation from panic to rhythm doesn't happen overnight. It's cultivated through consistent practice, through choosing faith over fear, in small moments until it becomes your default response. Every time you feel anxiety rising because results aren't appearing fast enough, you have an opportunity to breathe, to remember the principles, to reconnect with the certainty that what you're building in silence is real and valid even before it becomes visible. Each time you make this choice, you strengthen the neural pathways of faith and weaken the old patterns of doubt. This is the journey from amateur to master. The amateur needs constant external validation to maintain belief. The master has developed such strong internal knowing that external circumstances become almost irrelevant to their certainty. The amateur measures progress daily and feels discouraged when they don't see change. The master measures progress by the strength of their faith and knows that external change is inevitable once internal alignment is complete. The amateur rushes toward every possibility out of fear of missing out. The master waits for the right opportunity with calm confidence, knowing that what's meant for them cannot miss them, and what's not meant for them would only drain their energy. Your ability to trust the unseen, to maintain faith through the gap between decision and manifestation, to act from patient certainty rather than anxious urgency. This is what determines whether your current vision becomes your future reality or just another abandoned dream. The principles work, but they require you to work with them, not against them. They demand that you honor the rhythm of creation instead of trying to impose your impatient timeline onto a process that operates by laws far more ancient and reliable than your temporary discomfort. Write in the comments, "I trust divine timing," because what we need to address now is how to handle the specific moments when doubt creeps in despite your best efforts, and why having a protocol for returning to alignment is the difference between temporary setbacks and complete derailment. Let me share something that will completely transform your relationship with money and prosperity, because most people fundamentally misunderstand what money actually is. They treat it like a static thing to be accumulated, hoarded, and protected at all costs. They clutch it tightly, afraid that if they let any of it go, they'll have less. But this mindset is precisely what keeps them trapped in scarcity, because they're violating one of the most fundamental laws of the universe, the law of circulation. Money is not a thing to be possessed. It's a force, energy in motion, and like all energy, it must flow or it stagnates and dies. Look at everything in nature that thrives, that grows, that sustains itself over time. Nothing that lives can be hoarded. Everything that endures must circulate. The universe itself breathes by giving and receiving, a constant rhythmic exchange that maintains the balance of all creation. Your lungs don't hoard air, they take it in and release it. Out, over, and over. And this circulation is what keeps you alive. The moment circulation ceases, decay begins. This isn't philosophy or spiritual theory. This is observable natural law, and it applies to prosperity with the same precision that it applies to your breathing. The hidden truth that wealthy people understand, either consciously or instinctively, is that money flows to those who allow it to flow through them, not to those who try to trap it and hold it captive. When you receive money, and immediately clutch it in fear, refusing to let any circulate back out into the world, you send a signal to the universe that says, "I don't trust more to come. This is all there is. I must protect this because the supply is limited." And the universe, being a perfect mirror of your beliefs, responds by confirming that limitation. The flow slows to a trickle, and you wonder why you can't seem to get ahead despite your careful saving and fearful protection of every dollar. But observe nature, and you'll see the principle of return operating everywhere. The river that gives water to the sea never runs dry, because the sea returns that water as vapor that becomes rain that feeds the river again. The cycle is perfect, endless, abundant. The tree that sheds its leaves in autumn doesn't mourn the loss or try to clutch onto those leaves in fear that new ones won't come. The tree knows, through its very nature, that renewal is guaranteed. It releases what has served its purpose, trusting completely that the cycle will continue, that spring will bring new growth, that the loss is temporary, but the principle of return is eternal. Yet man, given the same intelligence that governs all of nature, makes the devastating choice to clutch possessions in fear. He interrupts the flow that would naturally deliver increase. He breaks the circulation that would bring abundance. He creates scarcity through his own fearful hoarding, then blames external circumstances for his limitation. The tragedy is that the prosperity he's desperately trying to protect by holding tight is the very prosperity he's preventing from multiplying by refusing to let it flow. The impact of understanding this principle transforms not just your finances, but your entire relationship with abundance in all its forms. When you recognize that giving and receiving are two halves of the same breath, that you cannot truly receive unless you're also willing to give, that circulation is the proof of faith in unlimited supply, everything shifts. You stop approaching money from scarcity and start engaging with it from abundance. You stop clutching and start stewarding. You stop hoarding and start circulating with intention and wisdom. This doesn't mean reckless spending or giving away money you need for genuine responsibilities. That's not circulation. That's chaos. True circulation means understanding that money is a tool for exchange, a medium through which value flows, and that the more freely you allow it to move through your life in service of your values and vision, the more freely it can return to you multiplied. It means paying your bills with gratitude rather than resentment, knowing that each payment is affirming your ability to participate in the flow of exchange. It means giving generously when inspired, not from obligation, but from recognition that you're part of an infinite cycle of abundance. Now I want to go even deeper into why this circulation principle is so powerful. because there's a hidden mechanism at work that most people never discover. When you give, whether it's money, time, attention, encouragement, or any form of value, you're not just being generous or kind. You're actually sending a message to your subconscious mind and to the universe itself. You're declaring through your actions, I have more than enough. I trust the supply. I am abundant. And your subconscious, receiving this message, begins organizing your circumstances to match this. Declaration of abundance. The universe, responding to the frequency of generosity and trust, begins orchestrating opportunities for increase. But when you withhold, when you grip tightly to what you have out of fear that more won't come, you send the opposite message. Your actions declare, I don't have enough. I can't trust the supply. I am limited. And again, your subconscious and the universe respond perfectly to this frequency, creating circumstances that confirm scarcity. Same universal laws, same creative mechanism, completely opposite results, based solely on your relationship with circulation. The transformation that occurs when you shift from hoarding to circulating is often immediate and undeniable. People who begin consciously practicing generous circulation frequently report that money starts flowing to them from unexpected sources. Opportunities appear that weren't there before. Clients arrive. Raises happen. Windfalls occur. Not because they've manipulated the universe, but because they've aligned themselves with the natural law of exchange. They've stopped blocking the flow with fear and started facilitating it with faith. This is the revelation that changes everything about how you interact with prosperity. You're not trying to accumulate and protect a finite resource. You're learning to participate in an infinite circulation, to become a clear channel through which abundance can flow, both to you and through you. The more freely you allow this flow, the greater your capacity to receive becomes. The more you trust the principle of return, the more evidence you receive that the principle is absolutely reliable. Write in the comments, I am a channel for abundance. Because what we need to explore now is how to practice this circulation in practical daily ways that build your faith in the principle while also expanding your capacity to receive, and why the way you handle small amounts of money determines whether larger amounts will ever trust you. With their flow, there's a subtle but absolutely critical distinction that determines whether your acts of generosity multiply your abundance or drain your resources, and most people completely miss this because they focus only on the action of giving, without understanding that the energy behind the action is what creates the result. When you give, whether it's money, time, service, or attention, you must do so with joy, not reluctance. This isn't just about feeling good. This is about the actual vibrational frequency you're attaching to that gift, because the spirit in which you give determines the measure of return you'll receive. A grudging gift, one given out of obligation or guilt or social pressure, carries the vibration of loss. You're essentially saying through your energy, I'm losing something by doing this. This is leaving me with less. I resent this necessity. And your subconscious, along with the universal law of return, receives this message and creates more. Experiences of loss, more situations where you feel obligated to give without joy, more circumstances where resources leave you carrying that same frequency of resentment. You wonder why generosity doesn't seem to come back to you, never realizing that you poison the gift with the energy of scarcity. But a joyful gift, one given freely with genuine enthusiasm and gratitude for the ability to give, carries an entirely different vibration, the vibration of increase. Through the act of joyful giving, you're declaring, I have so much that I can share with delight. Giving doesn't diminish me. It expresses my abundance. I'm thrilled to participate in this circulation. That frequency of enthusiasm and abundance magnetizes return. The universe multiplies enthusiasm, not sadness. It amplifies joy, not resentment. Same dollar amount, same recipient, completely different energetic signature, radically different results. The hidden truth here is that you're never actually giving away your substance. You're investing your energy into the circulation that returns everything multiplied. But the multiplication factor is determined by the emotional quality of the transaction. Think about it. Would you rather do business with someone who serves you grudgingly, making you feel like an inconvenience, or someone who serves with genuine enthusiasm and joy? The energy you feel from another person influences whether you want to return and bring others with you. The universe operates by the same principle. The energy you give out determines not just whether return comes, but how abundantly it flows back. This transforms every transaction in your life from a potential loss into an opportunity for increase. When you pay your rent or mortgage with joy, thanking the universe for the shelter it provides, you're not losing money. You're affirming your prosperity and inviting more. When you invest in your business or education with enthusiasm rather than fear, you're multiplying the value of that investment through the frequency you attach to it. When you give to someone in need with genuine delight that you can help, you activate the law of return in its highest form. Now let me reveal something about gratitude that most people treat as a nice sentiment when it's actually one of the most powerful forces for manifestation you have access to. Gratitude is the highest currency, and it's a form of invisible giving that costs you nothing yet returns everything. The moment you give thanks, genuine, heartfelt thanks, you've given energy to the universe, and universal law demands that it must return in kind. This isn't optional or arbitrary. This is how the mechanism of creation operates. Gratitude is faith made audible, tangible proof that you trust the law of increase before you even see the physical results. Think about what's actually happening when you express gratitude. You're not just being polite or following some spiritual practice you heard about. You're making a declaration to your subconscious mind and to the universe that you already possess abundance. You're affirming that good is flowing to you, that you recognize it, that you appreciate it, and that you're open to receiving more. Gratitude is the frequency of having, not wanting. When you're grateful for money, you're vibrating as someone who has money. When you're grateful for opportunities, you're resonating as someone to whom opportunities come. The universe responds to this frequency by delivering more of what you're already thanking it for. The impact of cultivating genuine gratitude as a daily practice, especially in those sacred moments before sleep, cannot be overstated. Most people end their day reviewing everything that went wrong, everything they don't have, everyone who disappointed them. They're essentially telling their subconscious, focus on lack, emphasize problems, expect more difficulty. But when you deliberately shift to gratitude before sleep, when you spend those precious final minutes acknowledging everything that went right, expressing thanks for progress made, appreciating the resources you have and those on their way, you're programming an entirely different reality. Your subconscious receives the instruction, we are abundant, we are blessed, good things flow to us. And throughout the night, it works to organize circumstances that match this frequency. You wake up with a different perspective, notice different opportunities, attract different encounters, all because you chose gratitude over complaint in those powerful moments before rest. This is the behind-the-scenes work that creates visible transformation. This is how you shift from scarcity consciousness to abundance mentality, one grateful thought at a time, one joyful transaction at a time, one enthusiastic gift at a time. The journey from reluctant giving to joyful circulation, from entitled expectation to grateful receiving, is the journey from poverty consciousness to prosperity consciousness. And prosperity consciousness isn't something you develop after you become wealthy. It's what creates wealth in the first place. The external abundance is always a reflection of internal abundance. When you're internally rich in gratitude, joy, and generous spirit, external riches have a clear channel through which to flow to you. When you're internally poor in appreciation, clutching resources in fear, complaining about what you lack, external poverty simply mirrors that internal state. Write in the comments, gratitude is my superpower. Because what we need to explore now is how to maintain this state of joyful giving and grateful receiving even when circumstances are challenging. and why your ability to be grateful before you see evidence is what actually triggers the evidence to appear. There's a truth about reality that's both liberating and uncomfortable, and once you truly grasp it, you can never again blame your circumstances on bad luck or unfair treatment. Everything you meet in this world, every person you encounter, every situation that unfolds, every pattern that repeats, it's all yourself reflected back through the mirror of external experience. Life is an exact mirror that never lies, never distorts, never shows favoritism. It doesn't give you what you want or what you wish for or what you think you deserve. It gives you what you are. Your outer world, in every detail, always bows to inner law. This isn't some abstract philosophical concept. This is the mechanism through which your reality is constructed. The people who treat you poorly are reflecting an aspect of how you treat yourself. The opportunities that pass you by are mirroring your internal belief about your worthiness to receive them. The financial struggles that persist are showing you the exact frequency of scarcity you're broadcasting from within. The mirror is perfect, precise, absolutely reliable. And the moment you understand this, you realize that changing your external circumstances requires only one thing: changing your internal state. Most people spend their entire lives trying to rearrange the mirror, wondering why their reflection doesn't improve. They want better relationships while internally feeling unworthy of love. They want financial abundance while vibrating at the frequency of lack. They want respect from others while failing to respect themselves. They're essentially standing in front of a mirror, frowning and demanding that the reflection smile first. It's backwards, it's exhausting, and it's why so many people work so hard yet see so little change. They're addressing the effect while ignoring the cause. The hidden truth that transforms everything is understanding that you carry a silent broadcast of your own belief everywhere you go, and others perceive this broadcast without even realizing they're doing it. You're not consciously announcing your self-estimate, but you're transmitting it through your energy, your posture, your tone, the way you move through space, the decisions you make, the boundaries you set or fail to set. These vibrations announce who you believe yourself to be, and the world responds accordingly. Not because people are deliberately judging you, but because they're unconsciously resonating with the frequency you're emitting. Think about how this plays out in the most common patterns you see. The timid person, walking through life with shoulders slumped, voice uncertain, constantly apologizing for their existence. They consistently attract dominators, not because dominators are targeting them specifically, but because timidity broadcasts, "I don't value myself," and that frequency naturally attracts people who are looking for someone to control. The interaction isn't random. It's resonance. The self-respecting person, on the other hand, moving through the world with quiet confidence, clear boundaries, and calm self-assurance, consistently attracts respect. Same world, same opportunities for mistreatment, completely different results. This is reflection, not chance. The impact of recognizing this principle is profound because it means you're never a victim of circumstances. You're always the creator of them, whether you've been doing it consciously or unconsciously. Every relationship that's difficult is showing you where you haven't learned to love yourself. Every financial challenge is revealing where you're still operating from scarcity consciousness. Every opportunity that eludes you is pointing to an internal belief that you're not ready, not worthy, or not capable. The external world is your feedback system, constantly giving you precise information about what's happening in your internal world. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this silent broadcast actually works, because understanding the mechanics makes it possible to consciously change what you're transmitting. Your subconscious mind, which holds all your beliefs about yourself, is constantly communicating with the subconscious minds of others through channels that bypass verbal communication entirely. Before you say a single word, before you make a single gesture, the other person's subconscious has already received the transmission of your self-estimate. They feel whether you believe you're valuable or worthless, powerful or powerless, abundant or lacking. This is why some people walk into a room and immediately command respect without saying anything, while others can talk extensively about their credentials and achievements, yet fail to convince anyone of their value. The first person's silent broadcast says, "I am worthy," so clearly that no words are needed. The second person's words say one thing, but their energy broadcasts doubt, and people always trust the energy over the words. Your vibration is your truth, and everyone around you can sense it, even if they can't articulate what they're sensing. The transformation begins when you realize that you can consciously change this broadcast by changing your internal dialogue, your self-image, your core beliefs about who you are and what you deserve. When you start treating yourself with the respect you want from others, when you speak to yourself with the kindness you desire from the world, when you hold yourself in the same high regard you wish others would hold you, something remarkable happens. Your silent broadcast changes. The frequency you emit shifts, and suddenly, without changing anything, external, the way people respond to you transforms. The journey from unconscious broadcasting to conscious creation of your energetic signature is the journey from victim to creator, from effect to cause, from powerless to powerful. You stop waiting for the world to treat you better and start treating yourself in a way that makes better treatment inevitable. You stop hoping people will see your value and start embodying value so completely that everyone you encounter feels it. You stop trying to convince others and start convincing yourself, knowing that once your internal conviction is solid, external confirmation becomes automatic. This is why all the external techniques, strategies, and tactics people chase will never create lasting success if the internal foundation isn't solid. You can learn the perfect sales script, but if your silent broadcast says, "I don't believe in my value," people will feel that and resist your offer. You can dress impeccably and speak eloquently, but if your internal dialogue is running a program of unworthiness, that's what others will perceive beneath the surface presentation. The mirror is always showing you the truth of what you are, not the facade of what you're trying to project. Write in the comments, "I am changing my broadcast." Because what we need to address now is the specific daily practices that shift your internal state and therefore your external reflection, and why consistency in this inner work creates compound effects that eventually make transformation appear effortless. There's a law operating in your life with such mathematical precision that once you fully comprehend it, you'll never waste another moment complaining about your circumstances or blaming external factors for your situation. This is the law of reflection, and it states that every person, condition, and event in your life is a direct projection of your dominant mental attitude. Not your occasional thoughts, not your surface wishes, but the deep, consistent mental patterns you run day after day, the beliefs you hold about yourself and the world, the internal dialogue that plays on repeat when no one else is listening. This is what's being projected onto the screen of your external reality. Here's the revelation that changes everything. You are simultaneously both the artist and the painting. You're creating the image through your thoughts and beliefs, and you're also experiencing yourself as that image made manifest in physical form. This dual nature means you have complete creative control, but it also means you can't escape responsibility for what you've created. Until you change the inner image, the one you're holding in your mind about who you are and what's possible for you, the outer reflection will persist with stubborn consistency. You can try every external strategy, read every book, attend every seminar, but if the internal image remains one of limitation, unworthiness, or scarcity, that's what will continue appearing in your life. The hidden truth is that most people approach change completely backwards. They're essentially striking the mirror and demanding that their reflection change. They want their bank account to improve before they change their scarcity thinking. They want people to respect them before they respect themselves. They want opportunities to appear before they believe they're worthy of opportunities. They're waiting for external evidence to give them permission to change their internal state, never understanding that the internal state is what's creating the external evidence in the first place. The mirror can only reflect. It cannot initiate. You must change first, and the reflection has no choice but to follow. Think about the profound implications of this for every area of your life where you've been feeling stuck. That difficult relationship isn't just happening to you. It's reflecting back an aspect of your relationship with yourself that needs attention. That financial plateau isn't random bad luck. It's showing you the exact ceiling of what you internally believe you deserve or can handle. That repeating pattern where opportunities appear and then vanish isn't the universe being cruel. It's your subconscious sabotaging what your conscious mind claims to want because deep down you don't believe you're ready or worthy. The external world is simply being an honest mirror, and mirrors never lie. Now I want to go even deeper into what actually breaks these patterns and creates real, lasting transformation. Because there's a quality that separates those who change their reflection from those who spend their lives fighting with it. That quality is faith, but not faith as most people understand it. Faith is not a feeling that comes and goes based on your mood or circumstances. Faith is a command, a decisive declaration, a line drawn in the consciousness that says, "This is truth," regardless of what current evidence suggests. Feeling wavers, constantly, shifting with every piece of news, every comment from others, every fluctuation in circumstances. One day you feel confident, the next day you feel doubtful. One moment you're optimistic, the next you're discouraged. If you're relying on feeling to sustain your forward movement, you'll be like a boat tossed by every wave, never making real progress toward your destination. But faith decides. Faith doesn't wait for the right feeling to show up. Faith doesn't need circumstances to be favorable before it takes a stand. Faith says, "I am moving in this direction," and then moves, regardless of how it feels, regardless of what appears to be true right now. The transformation occurs when you understand that feeling depends on circumstances, but faith creates circumstances. Your feelings are reactive. They respond to what's already happened, what you're currently seeing, what seems to be true based on available evidence. Faith is creative. It decides what will be true, declares it into existence, and then acts from that declaration until reality reorganizes itself to match. This is why people of great faith throughout history accomplished what seemed impossible. They weren't waiting for the world to change so they could believe. They believed, and their belief literally commanded reality to conform. Faith declares, "It is done," even while the entire visible world insists it's impossible. This isn't delusion or denial of reality. This is operating from a higher order of reality. Faith is sight from a higher altitude. From ground level, all you see are the obstacles directly in front of you, the walls that seem insurmountable, the challenges that appear overwhelming. But faith operates from a perspective that sees beyond current conditions to the inevitable outcome of aligned thought and persistent action. It sees the path where others see only barriers. It perceives possibility where others perceive limitation. The impact of shifting from feeling-based hope to faith-based certainty is immediate and undeniable. When you're operating from feeling, you're constantly checking external conditions to determine whether you should continue believing. Every setback shakes your confidence. Every delay makes you question whether you're on the right path. You're essentially giving your power away to circumstances, allowing the external world to dictate your internal state. But when you operate from faith, from that place of unshakable decision, that your vision is already complete in the realm of cause and must manifest in the realm of effect, circumstances lose their power over you. Faith doesn't ignore difficulties. It transcends them. It doesn't pretend challenges don't exist. It knows they're temporary and ultimately irrelevant to the final outcome. Faith looks at an empty bank account and sees it as a temporary condition that's already changing. Faith encounters a closed door and knows a better door is opening. Faith faces rejection and interprets it as protection from what wasn't meant to be. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. This is understanding cause and effect at the deepest level and choosing to operate as cause rather than be tossed around as effect. Your journey from where you are to where you want to be requires this shift from hoping things will work out to knowing they must work out, because you've decided they will. It requires you to stop treating faith as a nice feeling you have on good days and start treating it as a command you issue regardless of how you feel or what circumstances suggest. It requires you to recognize that you're not trying to convince the universe to give you what you want. You're aligning yourself with universal law that's been waiting for you to claim what's already yours. Write in the comments, "My faith commands my future." Because what we need to explore now is how to maintain this commanding faith through the inevitable tests and challenges that will try to shake it, and why. Your ability to hold faith steady when everything suggests you should abandon it is what actually triggers the breakthrough you've been seeking. There's a natural process to building faith that mirrors exactly how a farmer cultivates crops, and understanding this rhythm is what separates those who build unshakable conviction from those whose belief collapses at the first sign of difficulty. You plant faith through thought, choosing deliberately what seeds you're going to cultivate in the soil of your consciousness. You water it through repetition, returning day after day, night after night, to the same core beliefs, the same affirmations, the same vision. And you harvest it through patience, trusting that the unseen work happening beneath the surface will eventually produce visible fruit. This is not a quick process, and that's precisely why most people abandon it before they see results. Each affirmation you speak with genuine emotion and conviction strengthens the roots of your faith. Every time you choose to hold your vision despite contrary evidence, you're sending nutrients deeper into the soil, making the foundation more solid, more resilient, more capable of supporting the manifestation you're building toward. But here's what destroys the entire process. Each moment of doubt weakens those same roots. Every time you entertain fear, every conversation where you speak limitation instead of possibility, every mental rehearsal of failure, these are like pulling at the roots, disturbing the soil, creating chaos in the very foundation you're trying to establish. The hidden truth is that you must guard your mind as carefully as a farmer guards his field from pests, weeds, and destructive elements. A farmer doesn't plant seeds and then allow anyone to walk through the field scattering different seeds, trampling the crops, or introducing plants that will choke out the desired harvest. Yet most people treat their mind with far less protection. They allow any thought to take root, any opinion to influence them, any fear to contaminate their mental soil. They wonder why their harvest never comes, never realizing they've been sabotaging the growth process through lack of mental discipline. Think about the impact of this on your daily experience. If you spend 30 minutes in the morning affirming abundance, gratitude, and success, but then spend the rest of the day complaining about your circumstances, doubting your abilities, and rehearsing. Worst-case scenarios, what have you actually planted? Mixed seeds produce confused harvests. Your subconscious receives contradictory instructions and cannot execute clearly. The universe responds to your dominant vibration, not your occasional positive thought. If your dominant state is doubt punctuated by brief moments of hope, doubt is what will manifest. You must make faith dominant and doubt the rare exception, not the other way around. The transformation occurs when you recognize that building faith is not a passive process. It requires active cultivation, consistent attention, deliberate repetition. This is why the nightly practice we've been discussing is so crucial. It's not just about ending the day well. It's about watering the seeds of faith you planted during the day, strengthening those roots one more time before sleep, programming your subconscious to continue the cultivation work while you rest. Each night that you return to your core affirmations. Each morning that you reestablish your vision. You're reinforcing the pattern until it becomes so deeply rooted that temporary setbacks can no longer shake it. Now I want to go even deeper into what makes this faith effective rather than just wishful thinking, because there's a critical element that most people overlook entirely. faith must join with definite purpose. You cannot simply have vague belief that things will generally improve and expect specific results. Vague belief receives vague results. Maybe something positive happens eventually. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you notice improvement in some undefined area. But that's not the kind of transformation we're talking about. Infinite intelligence cannot reward indecision. The universal forces that respond to your mental state require clear direction, specific intention, definite vision. When your thought is definite and your belief firm, when you know exactly what you're creating and you hold unshakable faith that it's already done in the invisible realm, nothing can resist you. Not circumstances, not other people's opinions, not temporary setbacks, not delays. Clarity of purpose magnetizes circumstances with the same precision that a magnet attracts iron. The clearer you are about what you want, why you want it, and how you'll recognize it when it arrives, the more powerfully your consciousness can organize conditions to deliver it. Ambiguity disperses creative power. Specificity concentrates it. The revelation here is that most people's faith is ineffective not because they don't believe, but because they don't know what they believe for. They have general hopes for better circumstances, vague wishes for more money, undefined desires for success. But the creative mechanism in your mind needs specific blueprints to build from. If you tell a builder, "Build me something nice," you'll get random results. If you provide detailed plans with exact specifications, you'll get exactly what you envisioned. Your subconscious is the builder, and faith is what empowers it to construct, but definite purpose is the blueprint it follows. Think about how this applies to your current situation. Can you articulate in precise terms what you're building with your faith? Not just, "I want to be wealthy," but what specific level of wealth, for what purpose, creating what kind of lifestyle, serving what values. Not just, "I want a better career," but what exact role, in what type of organization, utilizing which of your gifts, creating. What kind of impact? The more specific your vision, the more clearly your faith can direct universal forces toward its manifestation. The vaguer your desire, the more scattered your results will be. Your journey from where you are to where you want to be requires this marriage of unwavering faith and crystal clear purpose. You need both. Faith without definite purpose is like powerful energy with nowhere to channel. It dissipates without creating anything substantial. Definite purpose without. Faith is like having detailed plans, but no belief they can be realized. The vision stays trapped in imagination, never crossing over into manifestation. But when you combine absolute clarity about what you're creating with unshakable faith that it must materialize, you become an irresistible creative force. Write in the comments, "I know exactly what I'm creating," because what we need to address now is how to maintain this combination of definite purpose and firm faith through the final stretch, when you're closest to breakthrough but also most vulnerable to giving up, and why understanding this critical phase determines whether you finally cross the finish line or abandon the race steps away from victory. There comes a sacred hour in this journey that you won't recognize immediately when it arrives, because it doesn't announce itself with fireworks or dramatic revelations. It emerges quietly, almost imperceptibly, like dawn replacing darkness so gradually that you can't pinpoint the exact moment night became day. This is the hour when you no longer hope for proof because proof surrounds you. You wake up one morning to a deeper calm than you've ever known, and instead of immediately checking circumstances to see if things are improving, you sense with absolute certainty that everything is ordered, everything is unfolding, everything is exactly as it should be. Opportunities that you used to chase now come easily, presenting themselves at precisely the right moment without strain or desperation on your part. People listen when you speak, not because you've suddenly become more charismatic or persuasive, but because you're now broadcasting a frequency of certainty that others instinctively recognize and respect. Peace replaces struggle in every area of your life, not because challenges disappear, but because you've stopped interpreting challenges as threats and started recognizing them as the natural resistance that makes growth possible. This is law. Made visible. This is the invisible becoming visible. This is faith materialized into form. The hidden truth about this phase is that it doesn't feel like arrival at all. It feels more like remembering something you always knew. You don't celebrate frantically or announce your success to everyone. You simply move through your days with quiet confidence, handling what needs handling, creating what needs creating, allowing what needs allowing. The anxiety that once dominated your thoughts about money, success, and worthiness seems almost laughable now, like a dream you barely remember upon waking. You wonder how you ever gave those fears so much power, how you ever believed the limitations that kept you small for so long. Think about the profound shift that's occurred in your entire being. You're no longer performing faith as something separate from yourself. You've become faith embodied. You're not trying to attract prosperity. You are prosperity expressing itself through human form. You're not seeking alignment with law. You are law in action. This is the transformation that happens when you've consistently applied these principles night after night, affirming your vision, guarding your thoughts, maintaining your frequency despite all contrary evidence. The external world finally caught up with the internal conviction you've been holding steady. Now I want to go even deeper into what life looks like from this elevated state, because this is where true mastery reveals itself. When law becomes life, when these principles move from concepts you practice to truths you embody, your actions no longer feel forced or effortful. You're not laboring for outcomes anymore, constantly pushing and striving and struggling to make things happen. Instead, you're expressing law through every decision, every conversation, every choice. You've become a clear channel through which universal intelligence flows, and that flow is effortless because you've stopped resisting it with doubt, fear, and impatience. Confusion cannot exist in a disciplined mind, and your mind has become disciplined through months of nightly practice, daily affirmation, consistent alignment. Where you once agonized over decisions, you now sense clearly what's right. Where you once forced timing, you now feel intuitively when to move and when to wait. Where you once filled silence with nervous chatter, you now recognize when to speak and when to remain silent, understanding that silence often carries more power than words. This isn't because you've gained supernatural abilities. It's because you've cleared away the mental noise that was blocking your natural connection to infinite intelligence. The impact of reaching this state extends far beyond personal success or material gain. You become a different kind of presence in the world. People feel something when they're around you, though they might not be able to articulate what it is. They sense your calm in situations that would create panic in others. They notice your certainty in circumstances where most would doubt. They feel drawn to your energy because you're radiating a frequency of peace and abundance that their own souls recognize as truth. You're not trying to convince anyone of anything. You're simply being what you've become through disciplined inner work, and that being speaks louder than any words could. Your relationship with time itself transforms. You no longer feel rushed or behind, or like you're running out of opportunities. You understand that everything is happening in perfect timing, that delays are divine protection, that what's meant for you cannot miss you no matter how circuitous the path seems. This doesn't make you passive or complacent. It makes you strategic. You act decisively when the moment is right, and you rest peacefully when patience is required. You've learned to read the rhythm of your own life, to feel the pulse of right timing, to trust the intelligence that's orchestrating circumstances beyond your conscious awareness. The journey from desperate hoping to certain knowing, from anxious striving to peaceful allowing, from forced effort to natural expression, this is what you've accomplished through your commitment to these principles. You didn't just learn techniques or acquire information. You transformed your consciousness, rewired your subconscious, and aligned yourself with laws that have been governing success, prosperity, and fulfillment since the beginning of time. What seemed like individual practices, the nightly affirmations, the grateful thoughts before sleep, the silent protection of your vision, the joyful circulation of resources, they've all converged into a unified way of being that now feels as natural as breathing. This is not the end of your journey, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where you operate from mastery rather than struggle, from abundance rather than scarcity, from faith rather than fear. You've broken through to the other side of the principles we've explored together, and now you get to experience the effortless flow that comes when you finally stop fighting against the current of universal law and start moving in harmony with it. The quiet harvest has arrived not because you forced it into existence, but because you prepared the soil, planted the seeds, watered them faithfully, and trusted the process even when nothing was visible above ground. Write in the comments, "I have arrived in flow," because what we need to bring together now are all the threads we've explored, showing you how each principle interconnects to create this state of effortless manifestation and giving you the roadmap to maintain this elevated consciousness for the rest of your life. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, through every principle we've explored, every truth we've uncovered, every revelation about how your mind actually creates your reality, then you're exactly the kind of person this message was meant to reach. You're not here by accident. You found this video because you're ready for a different level of understanding, a deeper transformation, a shift from struggling to flowing. I create content like this because I genuinely believe these principles can change lives, and I've seen it happen time and time again. If this resonated with you, if something shifted inside as you listened, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more we're going to explore together: principles of prosperity, consciousness, manifestation, and the hidden laws that govern success. Each video is designed to give you practical wisdom you can apply immediately, not just theory, but actual tools for transformation. And here's what I'd love to know. If you made it all the way to this moment, if you absorbed everything we covered today, drop a comment and simply write, "This message was meant for me." I read every comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your commitment to this path, even if it's just a few words in a comment section. It's a way of telling the universe and yourself that you're serious about this transformation. Before you go, if this video brought you value, if it clarified something you've been struggling with, if it gave you a new perspective on how to create the life you actually want, click that like button. It helps more people discover this content, but more than that, it's a small way of completing the circle of exchange we've been talking about. You received value, and this is how you circulate that energy back. Now, there's a video right here that takes what we've covered today even deeper. It explores the specific techniques for maintaining this state of flow we've discussed, and it's the perfect continuation of this journey. Click and continue with me over there.